The shove sent her chow tray clattering across the deck, gravy and green beans skidding under 3 tables before it stopped against a boot. I was scraping the last of my meatloaf when it happened, so I saw the whole thing from 4 feet away. Corporal Dale Huff, 200 pounds of marine muscle and about a gallon of bad attitude, put both hands into the shoulder of a small woman in a plain utility uniform and sent her stumbling into the tray rack. "Watch where you're standing, sweetheart," Huff said, loud enough that half the mess hall turned. "This line moves for real Marines." She caught herself on the rack, straightened her jacket and looked at him. Not up at him, she was maybe 5'4" to his 6'2", but at him, level and unhurried, like she was reading a manual she'd already memorized. "You dropped my tray," she said. Her voice was quiet. Nobody but the front tables heard it. "Boo-hoo, get another one." Huff turned back to his buddies, already grinning for the next line. I set my fork down. I'd seen new arrivals get ribbed before, that was normal, even expected. But this was different. Huff had put his hands on her, and she hadn't said a word about that, only the tray. Huff's buddy Landry, a lance corporal with a mouth that never seemed to close, leaned back in his chair. "She's probably some contractor's assistant, probably lost." "Hey, you lost, sweetheart." "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said, not looking at him, already reaching for a fresh tray. "Sure you are." Landry laughed, and 2 more Marines at his table laughed with him, the kind of laugh that isn't about anything funny, just about being part of a group that's decided someone else is beneath it. I felt my jaw tighten. I told myself it wasn't my business. Nobody said anything. A mess sergeant started toward the spill with a mop, and the woman, her name tape read HARLOW, nothing else. No rank insignia visible above her collar because her jacket was zipped high against the cold snap that week, bent down, picked up her own tray and got back in line like nothing had happened. No raised voice. No shove back. She just stood there patient while Huff and his friends laughed behind her. I'd been in the Corps 6 years by then, an NCO who thought he'd seen every kind of trouble a mess hall could produce. I figured Huff would get chewed out eventually, maybe not today. I went back to my food. She reached the serving line again, took a fresh tray without complaint, and found a seat alone near the wall, 3 seats down from where Huff was still holding court. She ate methodically, unhurried. A couple of junior sailors glanced her way, unsure whether to sit near her, and settled on steering clear. I watched her a minute longer than I should have. There was something in her stillness that didn't match the moment, no flush of embarrassment, no glance toward the door. She looked like a woman waiting for a scheduled event, checking her watch once and going back to her meal. That's when the base intercom crackled, not the usual lunch announcements, but the command channel, the one that only goes live for something real. "All personnel, stand by. Base commander conducting facility walkthrough, mess hall, immediate." Chairs scraped. Marines stood a little straighter out of pure habit, the way you do when brass might walk in, even if you don't know who. The double doors opened and 2 aides came through first, then Colonel Renata Voss, and I watched 40 Marines go rigid at once, because everybody on that base had heard the name Voss even if half of us had never seen her face. She commanded the joint task force that had reorganized our whole battalion's logistics chain 8 months earlier. She did not do casual walkthroughs. She did not, as a rule, eat with the junior enlisted. Huff shot up out of his seat along with the rest of us, spine straight, eyes forward. I could see the calculation running behind his eyes, trying to remember if he'd done anything in the last hour that could reach a full colonel's desk. He had no idea yet how close that math was. She walked straight toward Huff's table. I thought we all thought this was about to be some kind of accountability visit, maybe unrelated, maybe not. Then Colonel Voss stopped beside the woman with the tray. The woman Huff had shoved 20 minutes earlier. "Commander," the colonel said, "I apologize for the delay. Your escort is ready when you are." The mess hall went dead silent. Forks stopped. I actually heard the refrigerator compressor kick on in the back. That's how quiet it got. The woman Harlow set her tray down calmly. "Thank you, Colonel. Give me one moment." She unzipped her jacket 2 inches. Underneath, pinned to the collar of the uniform shirt she'd kept covered the whole meal, were the silver eagles of a full-bird Navy commander, Joint Service Liaison rank equivalent to a full colonel. Not visiting brass. Not administrative staff. She was the officer running the very inspection Colonel Voss had just walked in to support, a joint command review that outranked the base commander's own authority for the duration of the visit. Huff's face went the color of old paper. Landry, 2 seats down, went stiff as a fence post, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. "Corporal," Colonel Voss said, without raising her voice, "front and center." Huff stood. His chair legs screeched against the tile in a room where you could have heard a coin drop. He walked to the space in front of Commander Harlow and snapped to attention so fast his heels cracked together. Nobody moved, nobody breathed loud. Commander Harlow studied him for a moment, not with anger, not with the satisfaction you'd expect from somebody who'd just been vindicated in front of an entire mess hall. Just quiet appraisal, the way she'd looked at him the first time. "Corporal Huff," she said, "you put your hands on a fellow service member in a chow line today. You didn't know my rank. That's not the point. You didn't know anyone's rank. That's how you're supposed to treat every person in this hall, like they might outrank you, because dignity isn't something you extend based on what's pinned to a collar." "Yes, ma'am," Huff said. His voice cracked on the second word. "I've read your file, Corporal. Marksmanship high, conduct record clean until 11 months ago. You're better than what I saw today." "Yes, ma'am." "I'll be speaking with your command sergeant major before I leave the building, but I'd like you to spend the time between now and then thinking about every quiet person in a plain uniform you've ever brushed past without a second look. Some of them are exactly who they appear to be. Some carry more responsibility than you'll hold in your career. You don't get to choose which, so you extend the respect to all of them, every time." "Yes, ma'am, understood, ma'am." She held his eyes another 2 seconds, then gave a short nod. "Return to your seat." Huff sat down like his legs had stopped working correctly. Nobody at his table said a word to him. Nobody laughed. Landry set his fork down very carefully, as though any sudden movement might draw the commander's attention his way next. It didn't. She had already finished with the two of them and moved on, the way a good officer does, correcting the behavior, not extending the punishment into a public spectacle. Commander Harlow turned to Colonel Voss. "I'm ready for the flight line review now, Colonel. Let's not keep the wing waiting." "Yes, Commander." Colonel Voss actually stepped back to let her lead, and the two aides fell in behind them like they'd rehearsed it. Harlow walked out with her tray still on the table, gravy stain and all, because she never came back for it. I sat there with my fork in my hand for a long moment after the doors swung shut. Around me, the mess hall filled with the low hum of 40 conversations restarting all at once, all of them about the same thing. I finished my meal in silence, thinking about how she'd stood in that line, shoved and mocked, and never once reached for the rank that would have ended it instantly. She let the moment happen honestly, on its own terms, and only stepped into who she was when the room needed to see it plainly. That struck me harder than the eagles on her collar ever could have. 3 weeks later, I heard Huff had put in for a transfer to a unit clear across the country. Landry stayed, but he got quiet after that day in a way that lasted. He started holding doors. He started saying "ma'am" to sailors half his rank just to be safe, and nobody ever teased him for it, because everybody in that mess hall had learned the same lesson at the same time. I asked our command sergeant major about it a few days later, carefully. He told me Commander Harlow held a joint service liaison billet that answered directly to the review board conducting our base's readiness inspection. She'd spent that morning touring 3 commands in plain uniform, unannounced, so nobody would perform for her. The mess hall hadn't even been on her schedule. She'd walked in because she wanted to see how Marines treated each other when they thought no one who mattered was watching. Huff had answered that question for her, without knowing he was being asked it. Every time I walk through a chow line now, I look twice at the quiet ones. I don't assume rank. Commander Harlow taught me that in about 90 seconds, without ever raising her voice above a conversational level, and it's the kind of lesson that doesn't wear off. I never saw her again after that day. I heard, secondhand, that the inspection went well for our battalion, and that somewhere in a report I'll never read, there's a line about a corporal and a shoved tray that never made it into any official record at all, because she decided the lesson mattered more than the punishment. I didn't need to see her again to understand what she'd done. Some lessons only require one delivery if the person delivering it is precise enough. She was.